Baroque art in France and Spain, as well as Northern Europe in less than 15 minutes. So let's get this going. Going for Baroque. Remember our key point that Baroque is divided into two schools of thought, both stemming from two high Renaissance painters, Raphael and Titian. You have the Classicists that use artworks like the Raphael version here to set up their artworks using the same kind of color schemes, the same kind of portrayal of the human form. And then you have the Naturalists that were inspired by Venetian painters like Titian, and using foreshortening and the certain type of, it's a color scheme that you can easily recognize. Alright, the first artist we're actually going to see is Valesquez, and he's known as the pre-impressionist because of his impasto technique. This is where you're actually going to see those brush strokes and a thicker application of paint. Who does he remind you of? Hint, 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 hint. Now, how are they the same, and how do they differ? Take a look at the use of space and the use of light. Where's the light coming from? Do they use a large space or a small space? Do they include the viewer somehow, and how do they do that? And of course, Velazquez is a naturalist. We're going to talk more about how Caravaggio and Velazquez are the same and how they differ in Class Connect, but take a look at their use of details and how they depict those details. Caravaggio's version of this is the guy with the little feather in his hat. Take a look at that feather and the details within. Now these girls have some little flowery, some kind of shiny brooches in their hair and on their clothes. Notice the difference between the two with the application of paint itself. Although you would see a lot of things in familiar with Velazquez as Caravaggio, there are many things different that are going to move us on into modern art. For a living, he was a royal court painter, so he was not a starving artist, but for himself, he painted genre scenes or things from everyday life. Take a look at that glass. This guy was 20 years old whenever he created this. Are you kidding me? And notice how this color scheme looks a lot alike the Death of the Virgin. Okay, so notice the time period too, 1619 and 1606. I have a feeling that Velazquez probably saw many of Caravaggio's works. So during class, you're going to have to think about it and answer this question. So if you haven't had a chance to go to Class Connect to do this, here's your think about it question for your test. What do you think the subject of Las Meninas is, and where does the mirror image of the king and queen come from? Where do you suppose Velazquez was standing when he painted the scene, keeping in mind that he added his likeness after he finished? Support your answer with what you see in the painting. And make sure you go back to slides 5 and 6 in the lesson 1.05 to get more acclimated with who the actual people are in the scene. It tells you who each person is. So this is the king, queen, that's Velazquez himself. This is Las Meninas here getting ready for a certain something. There's somebody going up the stairs. Who is that person and why is he doing that? So go back and take a look before you answer this question. So what is the actual subject? What is the painting all about? Is it a self-portrait? Is it a royal portrait? Is it a portrait of this little girl? And support your answer with what you see. You may want to go ahead and pause the video now so you can take a look. Moving on, Nicolas Poussin, the stage designer. This is our French artist from the Baroque period, and he was one that believed that all the world's a stage. He was essentially a stage designer in his landscapes. He was a big fan of the I'm not going to say small screen, that's not right, of the stage. And he is a big fan of screenplays and things like that. So he took inspiration from that and actually converted it to landscape paintings. This is actually a continuation of what we saw in Northern Renaissance with Peter Bruegel the Elder using the landscape as an actual subject. And he actually hides these little stories within. Now, these are actual stories of things that happen, like in Greek mythology and other things, but you wouldn't really know it unless you knew the story already, because you are focusing more on what's going on around them. He had this idealistic view of what the landscape should actually look like. So he's not actually out there looking at the landscape and putting it together. He's using pictures from his mind to set things up so that it looks a certain way. So he's a classicist. He believed that there should be some kind of rational order and that things should have this certain proportion in relation to one another. And he also believed that the human body should be depicted in a certain way. So a quiz question that you may see coming up: which statement best describes French Baroque artist Poussin's approach to painting? Did he record landscape scenes exactly as they appeared in nature? Did he paint stylized figures with exaggerated form? Did he arrange natural elements to construct idealized paintings? Did he paint landscape scenes with little emotion or narrative, aka story? So think about what I just said, and this is a quiz question you will see very soon. So now we're going to go for Baroque in Netherlands, Flanders, and Poland. Now this is our Dutch artist of the week, Jean Vermeer, and he was a little OCD. That's what I call it. He depicts everyday scenes with such detail. It's absolutely ridiculous, but it's awesome. And this whole interest in scenes from everyday life will carry on to Vincent van Gogh, who we will see in Unit 3. Notice his OCD attention to detail. I mean, look at this lady's dress. She's a maid, okay? You wouldn't see this sort of application of details in a normal person during this time period. You would see that in royal court paintings, in paintings of people with lots of money. But Jean Vermeer actually took this and put it into an everyday person and an everyday scene. The holes in the wall, okay? The nail in the plaster wall, the wicker basket, and also notice where the light is coming from, and who does that remind you of? We've actually seen 2 artists that do this so far. And yes, he is a classicist. Rembrandt van Rijn is the magician. He was the magician of light. He was inspired by Da Vinci and mixed with a little bit of Caravaggio. You will see tenebralism here. He also used impasto, like Valesquez did, with the heavy application of paint that you can still see the brushstrokes within. He did a lot of self-portraits, group portraits, and these self-portraits and group portraits were always laced with some kind of political commentary or Bible stories, and they were subtle stories. So unless you were close to the artist, or if you knew what was going on, that would be the only way you would be able to recognize what was going on in the painting. Now in Class Connect, I hinted on this artwork right here, Christ in the Storm. It was stolen in 1990. Have you seen it? And feel free to go take a look at the story if you'd like to when you go into the Class Connect session. Not required, or you will not be tested on it. Now what I want you to tell me is Rembrandt van Rijn a classicist or a naturalist, based on what we've learned so far? Okay, notice his use of color, notice his use of detail. These are both from Rembrandt and both very different depictions of the human figure. Notice the first one is woman weeping, and the next one is Belshazzar's feast. I have such a hard time saying that. Here's another one that we have to figure out if he's a classicist or a naturalist, and that's Peter Paul Rubens. He is the mystery. He had sculptural qualities to his figures, which they kind of look like sculptures. So something that we would see in early Baroque periods, also with classicists, right? But he had these dramatic gestures and poses. Colors are both reminiscent of both Raphael and Titian. But he had impasto painting techniques and incredible emotion and movement like the Mannerists. So what in the world was he? Go take a look at his artwork in 1.06. That is the one with the Christ coming down from the cross. But here is another example, Daniel in the lion's den. I like this example better. You can get in there and actually see these details, the way he uses paint, the way he sets up the scene, and also the way he depicts the human body. Does he look more like Michelangelo, or does he look more like the natural depictions of people in Caravaggio? So that is why he is the mystery. Can you tell me whether you think he is a classicist or a naturalist? Right, here's some more information here. We have a difference between our classicist and our naturalist. Okay, color schemes, the depiction of the body, and compositions all have something to do with this. And that is it. I did it in 11 minutes and 4 seconds. Good luck, and if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand in Unit 1.